God bless you. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we as believers, we have to be very watchful about what we say and what we agree with and who we agree with. And for example, so many people that I know, they, as some would say, they struggle with homosexuality. And, you know, those of us know that really what's going on is the spirit that's attached to them. And when you have demons attached to you or demons possessing you, a lot of times they expose themselves, they show themselves. And this particular demon, a lot of times it exposes itself by what people call being feminine a little bit, or being extra masculine. That's a lot of times how you can tell when there's a spirit either that has attached itself to a person or trying to attach itself to a person. And here's the problem that the Lord was speaking to me about with today concerning that, is that what many have done, and I'm talking about the people of God, is we've seen the spirit that's attached to the person or that has possessed the person, and instead of saying that we see the spirit on the person trying to oppress them and trying to vex them and trying to find a way in. And sometimes the spirit has gotten in and starting to take some possession of the person, and it has taken some grounds. But what we say is, yeah, they're gay. And the problem that I have with that is now that you have made what's attached to them, what's attached to a person, you have made that their identity. And the danger of that is that for the person, is that most of those demons are what we call familiar spirits, meaning that they've been attached to them and they've been lingering around. They've been hanging around a long time. And so if you as a believer agree with what the demon is already trying to tell them, if you as a believer don't call out what you see, but you attach that spirit to who that person is, that person typically will believe it because it's been there. Familiar spirits, meaning that it's been there for a while. So it's like, how can it not be me? I've been thinking like this. I've been feeling like this for years. So it got to be who I am. And you've come into agreement with it. And that's not who you are. And one of the things that the Lord was dealing with me about, and it's not just with homosexuality, it's just about anything. We are not to agree or come in agreement with anything that God hasn't said about us. I don't care what's attached to you. I don't care how long you've been listening to something or operating in something. That is not who you are. And we're going to go to the principle of first mention, meaning if you want to know who you are, if you want to know something, then you find out the first place that God mentions it, and that's how you know the heart of it. And so when you go to talking about who are we, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. That is Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man. This is when he created man. So God created man in his own image. That's what God is saying. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And so who we are, who God created us to be, is he made us in his own image, in his own likeness. We're like him. And it's funny, but it's not funny, because the devil been using the same tactic again from the beginning, because that's in Genesis. Well, if you go to Genesis chapter 3, you see the same thing going on. God puts Adam and Eve in the garden, and he tells them, he said, this is how I want things to go. This is what I want you to do. This is who you are. This is how I want you to operate. And you know what the devil says? he asks, are you sure? Genesis chapter 3. And he tells him, he says, he starts whispering sweet nothings as he do. That's the devil's tactic. He don't have no victory. So the only way that he can get us is to suggest or put thoughts in our head, do little things, hoping that we receive it and we get deceived, because deception is believing a lie. The moment that you receive something that God didn't say, the moment that you listen to a lie, at that very moment you are deceived. That's the enemy's tactic. That's why he's always trying to put stuff in the mind. That's why he always attacking the mind and coming against the mind. Because if he can make you buy into what he's saying, then he got you. And we're going to go to that scripture too. And so he comes to them and he says, pretty much, listen to me. If you'll do it this way, you'll get more. If you'll do it this way, you'll be wise. You'll be like God. And the crazy part of that is, from the beginning of the time, he's still doing the same thing. He's trying to give us what we already have. What you mean you'll be like God? The scripture just said, Genesis 1:27, that they were made in the image and the likeness of God. They were already. So he comes to them hoping that we don't already know who we are and don't realize what we already have, so that we'll receive something else. And we won't operate in who God has called us to be. And we'll operate in something else. And so he tells them, you'll be wise. You'll be just like God. Promised them what they already had. And they listen. And then it's the same tactic again, because he tried that on Jesus too in Matthew chapter 4 in the wilderness. He told him, he brought him up to the top and he said, look at all of this stuff. If you just bow down and you'll serve me, I'll give you all this. What you mean you'll give him all of that? The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and everything that dwell in it. It already belonged to him. How you going to try to offer him what's his? The devil, when you open up Genesis chapter 3, one of the first things it says about the serpent is that he was the most subtle out of all the beasts. That thing slick, that thing cunning. The devil will try to sell you your own stuff and make you pay for it. That's why we got to know better. He loves carnal or ignorant believers who don't know what they need to know. Because if you don't know, then he can tell you. But when you know, and it reminded me of Romans chapter 7. I told you I was going to bring the scripture to tell you the tactics of the devil, how he move and how he operate. Romans 7:11. It says, sin taking occasion by the commandment. And so what happened was, sin caught me slipping because I did not know commandment. I did not know what God said. And so what the devil does is, one scripture says he's like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. He's going around saying, who can I talk to? Who can I possess? Who can I oppress? Who will believe my lies? Because he's the father of lies too. He's walking around saying, who don't know enough and they'll listen to me. They'll take my foolishness in. And I'll make them identify with what I'm saying instead of what God's saying. Who will listen to me instead of knowing what God said? And so I'm saying again, I don't care how much you stand on and this is a revelation that one of the pastors at the fellowship I go to, Pastor Agnew, that he gave me, and the Lord reminded me of this. And he pulled out a chair one day. And when he pulled out that chair, he said, what is this? And we all said a chair. He stood up and he said, I'm standing on it and I'm using it as a ladder, but what is it? And we said, it's a chair. And I said that to say, I don't care how much you stand on the chair, it's still a chair. You can be used as a ladder, but you're still a chair. And you're at your best as a chair because that's what you were created to be. Hoping somebody connecting this. You're limited when you operate as anything else. The chair is not designed to be stood on and to handle that type of moving weight. It's not for that. But if you need somewhere to sit, that's where it's best at. Not at helping you reach things, but making sure that you don't hit the ground. It keeps you up off of the floor, and it makes sure that you can reach where God has set you. What God has placed before you. And so I'm telling somebody, be who God called you to be. Call things not as they call things as you want them to be, as you know that God has said them to be. We got to start saying, I see that demon, but this is who you are. We have to speak as the oracles of God and use our words to say what God is saying. Stop saying what we see. But what did God say? That's what I see. Stop speaking like the devil, agreeing with the devil. Because you are who God says that you are. And I'm almost coming to an end. It's time for us to start identifying with Christ's experience and not our own. His experience is he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was on him, and by his stripes we're healed. That's his experience, that we have healing. His experience is Galatians 2:20. I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith. This is how I'm living now. No longer I, but it's Christ. The life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith. I live by his faith. I live by the faith of the Son who loved me and gave himself for me. That's my identity. That's what I'm identifying with. His experience is that I'm free. His experience is that I'm made in his image and in his likeness. That's who we are. All that other stuff isn't our business. I don't care what people say. I don't care what demons saying. I don't care that you might have certain mannerisms and things going on trying to attach itself to you. That ain't none of your business. Your job is to identify with what Christ says. Your job is to say what God says and see things the way that he sees things. And all of that other stuff will be worked out. And so I'm just getting on here to tell somebody, stop agreeing with the devil. You stop doing it for yourself and you help other people. When you see demons and spirits attached to people, that's not who they are. They're who God says that they are. They are made in the image and the likeness of God. So we got to start calling stuff out, because the problem is, again, you can do something that God has not created you to do, and you might be able to operate a little bit in that thing. But the truth of the matter is, we're going back to the chair. You can do whatever it is that you want to do, but you're still who God called you to be. Forgive me for my phone actually just overheated. But again, you can try to be something that you're not, but you're going to be limited. Because again, you can stand on a chair as a ladder, but a chair is not a ladder. And the chair is at its best when it's being a chair. So I'm telling somebody, be who it is that God has called you to be. You're your best when you're operating the way that God created you. You're your best when you're doing what it is that he's called you to do, and when you're being who you are in him, who he's called you to be. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what you're experiencing. I don't even care what nobody else said. How the devil works too is he'll make your and you have to know that what's spiritual is what's real. Not what you see. That's why we walk by faith and not by sight. What you see can be lying to you. What you feel can be lying to you. What you think can be lying to you. What's real is what God says. The spiritual is more real than the natural. That's why the scripture says, set your affections on things above and not on things of this earth. What he says is real. And we got to be more spiritual to be able to call things the way that God says call them. And not go based off our emotions. I don't care what you've been dealing with for years. I don't care what people saying. What God said is truth. Let every man be a lie and God be the truth. And so I'm calling for us to stand on what God has said. I'm calling for us to make a decision that I don't care what demons trying to attach themselves to me. I don't care what other people say. I don't care what I feel about the situation. What I'm rocking with, I'm identifying with Christ. Not my own experience, not the traumatic things that I've been through. But I'm identifying with him. And I'm every bit of who he says that I am. I'm every bit of what he says that I am. Not my experiences. It's not about my experiences. What happened when I became born again is there's an exchange that happened. Meaning that he took my life and I picked up his. So all of that other stuff is gone. That old ain't none of my business no more. My job is to take on this new life that he's given me. And that's a life that's in his image, in his likeness. That's who I am now. So be who it is that God has called you to be. If you a chair, be a chair. Don't try to be something that you're not. Don't walk in something that God hasn't called you to walk in. And the danger about that is you can actually be successful. A chair can really be a help to help you stand up on something and reach something, but that still don't mean that that's where it's working its best at. That still don't mean that that's what it's supposed to be. I don't care if you write on a piece of paper and put on the back of the chair ladder. It's still not a ladder. It's a chair. I hope someone hears this and hears God's heart concerning this matter. Stop agreeing with demons. Tell your soul, which is your mind and your will and emotions. One scripture says, "Soul, hope thou in God." You're going to see things and you're going to do things the way that God says do it. You gotta tell your soul to hope thou in God. But I love y'all and God bless y'all. Say God bless you to my bestie. That's Coda. I love y'all.